There is a very popular idea that the Apostle Paul had his name exchanged from Saul to Paulo. But is that what happened according to the Bible? Did Saul become the same Paul? This is exactly what we will talk about in this video. In fact, many people think Saul has become Paul, but this is a mistake. God did not change Saul's name to Paul. Yes, it is true that in the Bible, there are records of occasions when God changed the name of a person, but that was not the case of Saul. What happens is that a popular idea arose that at the time of his conversion to Christ on the way to Damascus. However, nowhere in the biblical text that tells Saul's conversion there is the information that his name was changed from Saul to Paul, even after being converted. Note Book of Acts of the Apostles, for example, there is a direct reference to Saul as a man full of the Holy Spirit. And this reference is interesting because she explains that Saul was also called Paul. This means that Paul was a cognome from Saul. But why did Saul had two names, Saul and Paul? Well, in ancient times, it was relatively common for people to have more than one name. In the Greco-Roman world of the first century, this practice was widely used because of the context in which people lived. The Roman Empire dominated an extensive area and exercised government under many provinces, and the people who lived in these provinces originated in different peoples, each with their particularities, but who were subjected to the dominion of Rome. And although the Roman language was the Latin, a predominant language in the empire was the Greek, because of the great Greek cultural influence in the Hellenistic period. So many people who lived in the Roman Empire had the name of natural baptism of their land and culture, but they also had a Greek version of that name or assumed a Latin name, and that was the reality of the Apostle Paul. We know that Saul was a legitimate Jew born in the city of Tarsus of Sicily. He belonged to the tribe of Benjamin, was circumcised on the 8th day of life, and educated in the law as a Pharisee. Then, because of his birth, he received the Jewish name Saul, equal to the name of the first king of Israel, who even belonged to the tribe of Benjamin. And the name Saul means ordered or desired. Thus, Saul's name is nothing more than the Greek translation of the Hebrew name Saul. However, Saul also had Roman citizenship inherited from his father. So, as a Roman citizen, Saul had two others or even three names. And this is how we can explain the name Paul, which in Greek appears as Paulus, but comes from Latin Paulus, which means small. Therefore, Paul was probably the cognome Roman of Saul. But it is undeniable that in Saulo Bible is designated much more as Paul than as Saul. In fact, from chapter 13 of the Acts of the Actos of the Apostles, the name Paul is predominantly employed. But, interestingly, the same chapter speaks of the Roman proconsul Sergio Paulo, which Saul and Barnabas found in Paphos, on the island of Cyprus, as we read in Acts chapter 13 and verse 7. So some commentators conjecture that Saul gave preference to use his Roman name instead of his Hebrew name, as courtesy of Sergio Paulo. But the truth is that there is no evidence of this. Other commentators, on the other hand, suggest that this was perhaps a choice of Luke, the author of the Acts book of Acts. The idea is that, in registering the conversion of the Roman officer Sergio Paulo, there are also those who argue that Saul gave preference to using the name Paulo for being a kind name, as most of his ministry was developed among non-Jews. Presenting with the Roman name could be more appropriate for the one who became known as the Apostle of the Gentiles. And finally, there are still other interpretations, such as Agostinho's interpretation, who believe that the reason for Saul used the name Paul had to do with its meaning. For Augustine, Saul became Paul. But again, this kind of interpretation has no support and is just mere speculation. Most likely, Paul was really a cognome Roman from Saul who dates back to his life in Tarsus. And if you like this biblical clarification, share this video with someone else and leave your comments saying, if you already knew that, in fact, Saul has never become Paul. From all of us at Path of Faith, thank you for being part of today's discussion. We value your input, so please share your thoughts in the comments. Show your support with a like Spread the message by sharing and subscribe to stay connected with us on our journey of faith.